The Independent Enterprise Institute is a nonprofit think tank. We're downtown. We do free market public policy research. And our mission is just to promote fairness and freedom and make good policy good politics. So to that end, we have President and CEO Ken Lastman here to have a discussion with the FCC Chairman Ajit Pai about what's going on with the FCC. So take it away, Ken.
Thank you very much, Taylor. I want to ask you all to take a good look at this guy. He is our representative on the Hill. So when you need help, you need something from us, you need more information, Taylor should be your one-stop shop. We like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop on economic regulatory policy, and he's our portal for you. A couple quick things so that I don't forget. The chairman's on a tight timeline, so you're going to see a scene shift in about 20-25 minutes. We'll bring up a panel of folks who've been studying this issue or issues. And I want to remind everyone, particularly for any professional scribes, the whole event is off the record. I encourage you to ask questions, follow up with people, and get more information as needed. The chairman's staff, there's a few folks here, I brought a handout available for you as you leave. And I'd also encourage you to pick up the policy paper that was issued from CEI just this morning on, as a primer on net neutrality. Before my big announcements. I want to get started and roll right into this because I know you have a busy day and a busy week. And first I'm just going to ask you the easiest question I have. I want you to fact check for me and make sure I have this correct. My understanding is you joined the commission 5 years ago. It was appointed to President Obama. About 5 months ago, President Trump named you chairman, put your name forward for a second 5-year term. You're educated at Harvard and the University of Chicago Law. And if all of that is correct, my first question is, where did you develop the magic skills?
Great question. So I was actually the first FCC commissioner on Twitter, and I remember at the time, my colleagues telling me this is the most ridiculous thing, you shouldn't engage, you're just going to wait and find all these trolls, and next thing you know, all of them are on it, some of the staffs are on it. It's been a really unique opportunity for me to engage, and occasionally read a mean tweet or two.
May 18th is a regular Thursday for a lot of folks. But I understand you have some special things planned as the next open meeting in the commission. How do you expect that to go, and what are you hoping to accomplish with the major items on the agenda?
Well, to me at least, the major items on the agenda are things like Earth stations in motion, rural radio, and the like. I understand there might be something related to net neutrality on the agenda, which is striking a fair amount of public interest. We have teed up a notice of proposed rulemaking, as it is called, which, among other things, proposes to repeal the FCC's 2015 Title II regulations, proposes to remove the Internet Conduct Standard, which was the general authority for the FCC to investigate ISP business practices, and seeks comment from the American public on what the rules of the road should be going forward. We'll see how the vote shakes out, but I hope this is the start of a robust public conversation, one which has already started right now in the months to come.
Robust public discussion. I love that framing because it comes on the heels of our discussion about Twitter. I actually sat through a rate proceeding in a state regulatory concern. And we typically don't see fireworks at these economic regulatory cases. What is it? What's at the core? What is driving this seesaw effect, back and forth now going on, depending on where you started, 15, 20 years of debate about these questions with the networks that are the basis of the internet? Why the fireworks?
Great question. I think it's two things. Number one, that the internet is increasingly essential in American life when you apply for a job, when you want to educate your kids, when you want to get healthcare information, when you want to watch videos of your kids and grandkids. So much of our lives relies on the internet. I think many Americans, whenever internet policy is being discussed, naturally and understandably have a particular interest. The second thing is that, for better or worse, the FCC is now trying to shoehorn the marketplace of 2017 into the round holes of legal categories that were created many years ago, whether it's 1934 in the case of Title II, 1996 in the case of the Telecom Act of '96. And I think as these legal frameworks have become yellowed with age, it would be helpful for Congress to update those rules in a bipartisan way, give us the digital rules of the road, so to speak, going forward. And unless and until they do, the FCC is constantly going to be struggling with how do we think about this incredible platform that certainly wasn't conceived in 1934 and was only sparely mentioned just 2 decades ago. And that's part of the reason why I think the FCC has been struggling with it over the last last decade, actually.
So there's a very astute observation there. I want to call it out for everyone. This is a man who knows his audience. Right? So, Senate staff, largely in the room here, we're talking about a lesson until Congress updates the law. And I think I heard you say that you'd like to see that happen on a bipartisan basis.
I would imagine it could be UC'd pretty quickly. No, I'm just kidding. That's the aspiration anyway. But I certainly think it could be done. The Telecom Act of '96 was itself a historic bipartisan effort, and I continue to believe that on matters as important as this, that Congress could again speak with a unified voice.
I think I might be one person in the room with a 20-plus-year-old copy of the statute, the Telecom Act of 1996. And I want to read for you one sentence, just one sentence out of all of this work. It's a monumental achievement. Not without flaws, but it's a really wonderful achievement. I think it had some 97 votes in favor at final passage. But it says in the act, an act to promote competition and reduce regulation in order to secure lower prices and higher quality services for American telecommunications consumers, and encourage rapid deployment of new telecommunications technologies. Does the FCC open order, Internet open order, reduce regulation and encourage rapid deployment of technologies?
In my view, it does not. It adopts the heavy-handed regulations of Title II, and forbears of some of them to be sure, but it adopts a great many of them. And to me, at least, Title II takes us in the opposite direction of that aspiration. I think the framers of the '96 Act had in mind a light-touch, market-based framework envisioned in Section 230 of the Act, which, as you know, says that this internet marketplace should develop unfettered from federal and state regulation. And my worry is that this Title II framework actually impedes competition, lowers investment, reduces innovation in networks, and ultimately isn't good for the consumer, especially in the lower-income rural and urban areas, which are already difficult to serve. To me, at least, the goal of the FCC should be to maximize the incentive to invest in networks, to promote more competition, and to match the regulations to the marketplace that we're in, not the marketplace as it might have existed decades ago.
In just a couple moments, we're going to ask for any questions from you. So each of you should find cards. If you want to fill out a question, you can pass it to the sides, or failing that, I might just call on someone. You use an important word, and I'd like you to explain it a little bit. Particularly, think of a staff person who maybe has been working on communications law for less than a couple of years. Right? These are not issues that have been at the forefront in Congress in the last couple terms. Certainly, the committee staff has been, they wrestle with them over and over again. But for a regular senator coming to these questions, the Act creates what I think is a landmark set of tools in Title VII, in Section 706. And you use the term forbearance. What does a forbearance agenda look like, and what is available to you as you follow the law as a chairman?
It's a great question. So in Section 10 of the Communications Act, which is 47 U.S.C. 160, Congress in 1996 wisely gave the SEC the discretion to decide that a particular regulation or statute might no longer be necessary in the interest of competition or otherwise in the public interest. And so it said to the FCC, if you make certain findings, you can forbear. You don't have to enforce that particular statute or regulation. Now that authority applies to a very narrow segment of the SEC, of the Communications Act. It would be helpful, well, number one, I think the SEC should use it more often to relieve regulations that no longer have a purpose. Some of these rules, for instance, date back to the earliest days of the FCC. One of the first things I voted on when I came on board was the relaxation of requirements that were first imposed by the FCC's Telegraph Division in 1936. I don't know about you, but I've used a telegraph recently. But the second thing is it would be helpful for Congress to give the FCC broader forbearance authority across the different sections of the Act. Give the FCC sort of broad frameworks. We want you to promote competition. We want you to focus on investment. And within those general goals, allow the FCC to have discretion to decide how to meet those goals. That, I think, is the best way to ensure that the marketplace has regulations that are up to date and current. So I think that would be extremely helpful going forward.
Go for a speed round?
Sure, yeah.
All right, I'm still looking for questions. I haven't found any yet. Speed round, love it or hate it, public interest document.
Love it as it could be construed.
Can you explain what it is for us?
Sure. The FCC, generally speaking, has to vindicate what is called the public interest. And over time, that has become a very elastic standard. Sort of like looking into an audience full of people and picking out your friends. The public interest is whatever you decide it is. To me, at least, the public interest standard should be infused more fervently with principles of antitrust to try to figure out what is the optimal marketplace in terms of competitive structure and prices and the like, and to make sure the public interest is met accordingly. So when we're reviewing mergers, for instance, I think we should take a look at the competitive effects of a merger and decide what the likely effects are going to be. And if it's positive, then that's the public interest.
Second question in speed round.
All right.
You just got ahead of me.
Sorry
You
about
are
that.
the chairman. The question, speed round. Why does the FCC have any special role or expertise in merger approval? We already have a DOJ and the Federal Trade Commission looking after the interests of the law and consumers. Isn't the transfer, speed round, isn't the transfer of licenses simply a contractual matter?
Yes, in theory, no in practice.
Speed round, all right. Let's go to the audience. We'll let you off the hook. From the audience, will the proposed rulemaking repeal the net neutrality in its entirety? What aspects will remain and what will change?
Good question. So if the notice of proposed rulemaking passes, all we are simply doing is opening up a period of 3 months for public comment. We would be adopting a proposal to remove the Title II classification of internet service providers, and that they would return back to Title I information service providers, which I know sounds incredibly arcane, but essentially it means a return to the Clinton-era light touch regulatory framework. The second thing we would propose to do is to remove the Internet Conduct Standard, under which the agency investigates things like free data offerings by wireless carriers. As to the remainder of the rules, some have suggested the FCC should just get rid of them. Some have said they should all remain in place. We charted a middle course, and we said, let's just seek public comment on what the rules should be and what legal framework is best calibrated to secure the values that are reflected in those rules. And so for that's to be continued, I guess, is the answer to that part of it.
I'm gonna blend a question from the audience with something I had intended to ask about. You mentioned investment a couple times, I believe.
Yeah.
So isn't telecom infrastructure spending, capital investment, driven more by economic forces than other Title II regulation? My question was simply, what's the relationship between what happens at the Commission and what has happened in the last 5 years and what you're proposing to do and capital investment?
There's no question that there are exogenous forces at work. I mean, the marketplace, of course, is a very important factor when it comes to a company deciding whether and where and how and when, to invest. On the other hand, the regulatory framework has a significant effect on companies' willingness to invest. If you look at, for instance, the comments that have been made by some of the smaller ISPs around the country who are deploying to small towns like Chaparral, New Mexico, they've told us almost to a company that Title II regulations, as they put it a couple of weeks ago, hang like a black cloud over our businesses. They stand in the way of us getting financing. They impede us from being able to deliver new services and products to our consumers. Just last Friday, as a matter of fact, 19 municipal broadband providers, this is government-owned, nonprofit ISPs, who have no reason to seek a profit, of course, since they're nonprofits. They told us, too, that Title II has been bad for their businesses. It stood in the way of them delivering value for consumers. And so I do think the regulatory framework that's in place has a very important effect on companies' willingness to invest. It's basic economics that the more heavily you regulate something, the more you increase the cost of doing something, the less likely you are to get that something in the future.
Once again, you jumped into my notes. You read you addressed the question, the third question we had from the floor. So what I'm going to do is move us right into a Twitter speed round.
Oh gosh, okay. So 140 character answers or less, is that right?
The way this works, for those of you
including emojis. Yes.
For those of you unaware, Chairman Pai has been on Twitter, as he said, about 5 years. He's got more than 10,000 tweets out there.
Oh, my God.
His appointment,
Hopefully a few nuggets of wisdom I'm in there somewhere.
his appointment to a commission that's by definition bipartisan. He's a Republican. And I picked out one of my favorite Democrats to follow on Twitter. I'm going to read 4 tweets.
Okay.
Your job is to tell us who wrote the tweet, or if it's a fake tweet that I wrote.
Oh my God.
So we
it's
have,
either a Democratic elected official
it's
or
either
you.
Ajit Pai FCC,
Okay.
at John Dingell, or fake tweet.
Okay.
All right?
He is the master, I've got to say.
Number 1, speed round Twitter. Proposed rule. Middle seat passenger who's also tallest in row gets first dibs on armrest. This was a poll. 58% yes, we live in society. 42% no, the quick and the dead.
That was definitely me. It was a fundamental matter of injustice. I mean, as the tallest person in the row and who got stuck with the middle seat, I have to play armrest commando with my 2 fellow passengers. That's wrong. I think you should be entitled to the armrest if you're in the middle seat.
Entitlement from the chairman of the FCC. Number 2.
That's exactly.
We're off the record. Let me remind everyone. Number 2. Never trust anyone who wants to tell you about their fantasy football team. Speed round?
I would say Congressman Dingell.
At John Dingell.
All right.
Got 2 for 2 there. Number 3. If Ajit Pai FCC thinks he runs an independent agency, I've got a Dingellgram with his name on it.
Oh, I'll go with you because I can't imagine he even knows who I am. So, I mean, he's operating way up here. I'm sort of a piddling.
Fake tweet. Yes, you're
All
3
right.
for 3. And finally, before I invite you to give any closing remarks, just remind everyone, I know you're on a very tight schedule. We have more of a program to come. Final tweet. In a digital age, I believe broadband networks are core components of our nation's infrastructure. Is that at Ajit Pai FCC, at John Dingell, or fake tweet?
It's certainly something I would say, but it sounds more like Congressman Dingell wrote that. Really?
Chairman of the FCC.
I wrote that?
At Carnegie Mellon University.
did?
Carnegie Mellon University.
Oh my
you
God.
tweeted it out.
That's unbelievable. That's almost like Charles Barkley saying he was misquoted in his autobiography. It's like, unbelievable.
It's rough coming before
that
this
is
audience.
sad.
As I
apologize
said,
for that.
I welcome
should
you.
know that
Any
better.
closing remarks, things that you want to make sure that this audience knows about what you have planned and what's on your agenda at the Commission?
Well, first and foremost, Kent, just thanks for the forum. Thanks to CEI for its advocacy and leadership on these issues. I really appreciate having a chance to interact with so many of you. I also want to take the opportunity to introduce some key members of my team. Tim Strachan, who's the head of our Legislative Affairs Office here. I had a chance to work with him many years ago. Many of you probably know him. Nathan Leamer, who's in the back wearing the red tie, very dapper fellow. He has also been doing a lot of outreach. I mean it when I say that we want to be resources for all of you. I worked on the Hill, Tim worked on the Hill, Nathan worked on the Hill. We understand how important the function is and how difficult it is when you're spread like butter over so much bread. It's very difficult in some cases to get the information you need in a timely way in order to advise your bosses. So consider us a resource. Email us, tweet at us if you want, but we want to supply you whatever info you need, and including meetings with your boss. If a senator has a question about a constituent matter or just wants to learn more about what the FCC is doing, part of the oversight function doesn't necessarily consist of in front of the Klieg-Lights at a hearing, asking questions, but also just the nitty-gritty work of understanding what it is we do behind closed doors. So we're more than happy to engage in whatever way you see fit. Finally, we have a really aggressive agenda. Not so much about things like net neutrality, which I understand are going to suck up a lot of the oxygen, but the bread and butter work of the FCC, getting more broadband into low-income areas, especially rural and urban, making sure we have a set of media regulations that enable companies to thrive in the digital era. There's so much that we're doing that doesn't make the front page of the news, and we would love to keep you posted about it. So feel free to get in touch. Ajit Pai FCC is a good way to do that. You'll get the occasional rant about my experiences on airplanes and the like, but somewhere sprinkled within there are a few nuggets of wisdom about the FCC's policies and procedures. So thanks again for the attention, and you now get to hear from the real experts about these matters, as opposed to someone who just gets to bloviate on behalf of the federal government.